Okay, I'm back again with some more questions. So these are questions that I didn't ask you before that I would like to ask you now. I know the last video I asked you a bunch of questions and I appreciate you answering those questions. So I hopefully you don't mind answering these questions again. So, question number 1. You mentioned in the book that the kids had to help around the farm. At what age do kids start to help? At what age do we start to help? I can't tell you exactly an age number. I just remember we start helping around when we start eating regular growing up food. And you also mentioned that most of the stuff that they helped with were physical stuff. What type of physical stuff were you talking about? And most of the stuff we did were physical stuff. We had to help with getting water to water the plant. We helped with planting peanuts and rice and stuff like that. So those are, and we also had to help gather the wood in order so the parents can cook our meals. So those are the kind of physical stuff I was talking about that we did around we did to help around. So in the book you mentioned about fishing and that you really enjoyed doing that growing up. Other than fishing, what other stuff do kids do for fun? What else we did for fun? We did a lot of running around and climbing trees. Growing up in a village, just because there are a lot of wild animals around, if you can run fast and you can climb a tree, there's chances that you might survive a wild animal attack. So we did a lot of climbing around, a lot of climbing trees. Most of the trees we like to climb were mango trees, coconut trees, and basically all the trees that are around my village. On the other hand, I was not much of a climber because I'm afraid of height, but I had speed, so that was my thing, is speed, not much of a climber. So to answer your question, we did a lot of climbing. Climbing trees were one thing that we did for fun, and playing in the mud was also something we did for fun. And kicking mangoes as a soccer ball was also something we did for fun. In the book, you mentioned that most of the meat that you guys ate, you had to hunt it yourself. Did you guys also raise animals? And if you did, what kind of animals did you guys raise in your village? Do you remember us having chickens and goats? Now, the most exciting thing about raising chickens is every time we need to eat a chicken, they will release the kids to be the one to catch the chicken. So that was another fun thing that we did, was catching chickens, because we were fast and we would just go until the chicken was caught. So what was the weather like growing up in your village in Sierra Leone? There are 2 seasons in Sierra Leone. So we have rainy season and dry season. In the rainy season, it will rain non-stop, like every day. And then the dry season, everything will just be completely dry. So that's what, those are the only 2 seasons we had in my growing up in Sierra Leone. So one thing that I didn't particularly care about the rainy season is because of all the creatures that comes with it when it rains. I remember that every time it rains, there would be a lot of ants, a lot of centipedes and mentipedes, and a lot of lizards. And anyway, I just hated rainy season. It just, first of all, we have to walk in knee-high water to get from the town to the farm. So I used to hated that, and it just, rainy season was just not a very exciting moment at all for me. As growing up, that's what I did not enjoy the rainy season at all. Summer though, when it is dry, that was my favorite time of the year. So in the book, you didn't mention anything about hospitals. What did you guys do to take care of yourself when you were sick or when somebody was bitten by a snake? Because I know in the book you mentioned that somebody got bitten by a snake, and you also mentioned it in the last video. So what did you guys do to take care of yourself without having a hospitals? So no, we did not have any hospitals, but the adults kind of knew the stuff to use to take care of us. But they use a lot of herbs and a lot of the stuff we use were more like herbs and plants and stuff like that to take care of us. Is there any story you can share with us? One particular story that I remember is growing up, I think I mentioned in the last video that I love to eat peanuts. And peanuts you can eat it cooked, uncooked, and raw. I remember one time I ate way too much peanuts, and I ended up having a upset stomach. In order to settle that, my grandmother made me drink this very yucky, thick, and very slimy liquid that once I drank it, it was kind of helped settle my stomach. So yes, we didn't have hospital, but the adult kind of knew the stuff to use to take care of us. Alrighty, moving on to the next question. What was your guys' day-to-day clothing that you wear at your village? We wear long dresses. Everything was handmade, so they're basically African dresses. I guess one thing that I should mention is growing up, we didn't have shoes, so our outfit don't come with shoes. So it's basically a long dress, and we just walk barefooted. Okay, so with this question, it's just me being nosy. Because you mentioned about having an outhouse. Does that mean you guys didn't have any indoor plumbing? We did not have indoor plumbing. So when we go to the town, we have an outhouse that we use. But when we go to the farm, it's basically you find a tree and you do your business. Unfortunately, we did not have any toilet paper. So growing up as a kid, the only way to clean ourselves was either use a leaf to clean yourself, or you drag your bottom on the ground. Period. The adults, on the other hand, would use water to clean themselves. So we didn't have toilet paper, so we had to do what we had to do. To use leaves, drag your bottom on the floor or on the ground. You mentioned that you guys didn't have any electricity. What did you guys use for light? So no, we did not have any electricity, but we had to rely on the stars and the moon for light, which growing up, I don't remember having any trouble seeing where I was going, just because the moon and the stars, they provided enough light for us. You mentioned that the adults in your village will go to a mosque to pray. What religion did you grow up with? Yeah, so my entire family, or my entire village, were Muslims. So I wasn't old enough to make it my own religion, but that's what I grew up with. You mentioned about going from the farm to town. What kind of housing do you guys have? And did you guys have any beds to sleep on? That's just me being nosy again. We did. I remember the house that we had was made out of mud bricks, which it was not fancy, but it was, something to shelter us in. Family members lived together, so there would be a lot of family in one house. We did not have any beds, so we had to use handmade mats to sleep on, which was good in the summertime because the floor would cool us off. Not so much when in the rainy season, when sometimes there would be a leak, and sometimes we wake up soaking wet. So that wasn't fun to do that. So, last question, I promise. You mentioned that you had to walk from the town to the farm. What was it like having to walk back and forth? I used to hate having to get up pretty early before the rooster crowed to go to the farm. The adults wanted to get up early and to head to the farm so that way they can start to work before the sun gets too hot. So I remember we had to get up pretty early and walk what seems like miles and miles. What was it like for you as a child having to do all that walking back and forth since you guys didn't have any any transportation and stuff? Because it was a long walk, and as a kid I would cry the entire way. But I do remember though, coming back to town, I found it to be more exciting. I don't know why it was a lot more exciting for me going back than it was for me having to get up early. I guess that's it. Having to get up early was not exciting for me versus having enough energy at the end of the day to walk back to town. That is the last question that I have for you. Thank you for answering my questions, and I know there's more questions to come because this book has a lot of information and I love stuff that I need to ask you. And thank you so much for taking the time to answer all my questions again.